Hello, my name is Mike Driscoll, and today I want to talk to you about Python web frameworks. So the whole point of this tutorial is to just talk about what frameworks are out there for you to use with Python. There's quite a few to choose from. The two most popular web frameworks are Django and Flask. You've probably seen these listed in job opportunities in your area. Django has been around probably the longest of the two anyway. And it is updated sometimes multiple times a year. And, it is known for being ridiculously fast, secure, and scalable. And it comes with everything that you need to get started with a Python web framework. In contrast to Flask, because Flask is a micro web framework, and so you have to write everything like you might have to write the database backend, which doesn't come with it. You might need to add an ORM, which is Object Relational Mapper. Django comes with all of those built into it. Django also has an admin interface and login capabilities, authentication capabilities built into it, whereas Flask does not. On the other hand, if you don't want to have all that extra stuff, if you don't want the batteries included that Django has, you can build it all yourself using Flask. And there's really nothing wrong with Flask. It's just minimal, and you just build what you need, and so it's just more lightweight. There's plugins in abundance for both of these two frameworks. So you can plug in pretty much anything that you need to Flask, and there's lots of extra like bolt-ons for Django as well. However, these are not just the only choices that you have in the Python web world. There are lots of other Python web frameworks. These are just a handful of them, in fact. Pyramid has been around quite a while, actually. I don't think it's been around quite as long as Django, but I may be mistaken. It comes from the Palette team, and it's been around, I want to say, a long, long time. Michael Kennedy from Talk Python really likes Pyramid. And, I haven't really tried this one myself, but they have a little quick start here, and you can see that you don't need a whole lot of code to create a Hello World example in Pyramid. So I think this one is probably worth checking out, but I just haven't played with it enough to really give it a recommendation one way or the other. Fast API is a pretty new one. It's not so much a web framework, even though people use it that way, and it even advertises itself as a web framework. I tend to think of it as a way to write APIs in Python. So if you need to create a JSON API or a web API, this is probably the tool I would reach for. Admittedly, I haven't really had to write APIs in any of my work, but this is a really cool tool, and it's done by a very popular and well-respected Python maintainer. CherryPy is one of the first minimalist Python web frameworks that I ever got to play around with. I actually got to play with this within the first year I started learning Python more than 10 years ago. It's really simple. You can see right here that there's not very much code to create a hello world, even less than we saw for the Pyramid project. It uses a lot of the same syntax that you'll see in other web frameworks, where they use decorators to determine which functions are endpoints, basically, or how to call endpoints, or how to call code in the web framework. Anyway, I remember enjoying learning how this one worked. TurboGears was also one that I learned early on. In fact, I learned TurboGears 1.5 or thereabouts. It was before 2.0 came out. Anyway, I didn't expect it to continue to exist as long as it did, because there seemed to be kind of a divergence in the team that was maintaining it. Well, some teams wanted to continue with TurboGears 1, and another part of the team wanted to do TurboGears 2. I don't know what happened there. I stopped following it. But anyway, it was a neat little project, and it's still around, and it looks like it's still actively updated. So, this is another one you could check out. I don't know how well it's doing or how popular it is, because I almost never hear about it, but, somebody's still supporting it. Webdupai has been around a long time too. It's a super simple open source full stack framework. I think it's kind of a learning framework more than anything. But if I remember correctly, it's like a one file download, or maybe it's a small handful of files. It's really small, so it's really easy for you to learn and grasp, how everything works in it. And it's just kind of an interesting framework from that perspective. Bottle is kind of the inspiration for Flask in a way. So I remember Bottle had been around, and then Flask was released as kind of an April Fool's joke, and then it became an actual web framework. And I think it was kind of, teasing the Bottle maintainers that, hey, here's an even lighter weight framework for Python. And, anyway, it became a real web framework, and it's really cool. Anyway, Bottle's been around a long time. It also is super simple and not as popular as Flask by any means, but it's still pretty popular and it's still pretty cool. So definitely check that one out. All right. But that's not all. Python also has content management systems. Plone has been around, I think, even longer than Django has, and it is built on top of Zope, or at least it used to be. Plone is a fairly popular product for CMS in Python, especially for government work. I've seen it used for lots of different government websites, government like scientific websites, and libraries is probably some of the most popular ones that I've seen it used for. I know it has a lot of built-in internationalization tools and accessibility tools, and they like kind of, I want to say that they were at the forefront in both of those for a long time, and I think the other web frameworks have caught up to some degree, but I'm not sure which one is the best now for that sort of thing. Django CMS is probably more popular now because it's built on top of Django, which is the most popular or second most popular web framework. I'm not sure which is the most. It's either Django or Flask. They're always trading places. Anyway, Django CMS is pretty popular. Makes things easy because if you already know Django, then you can just jump into the CMS side. Although I've heard that it can be, it's just another layer on the onion to learn. So check that one out. Wagtail has been gaining traction lately. I keep seeing it mentioned on Twitter. So I think this one looks kind of cool. I believe it's built on top of Django as well. And it looks like it does a neat job. I'm not sure. I'm not qualified to talk about the differences between Wagtail versus Django CMS. So I can't tell you, the ins and outs of the two of the pros and cons. But I would definitely check them both out if you need a CMS. And finally, we have PyLucid, which seems to be built on top of Django CMS itself. So it's kind of another layer. Oh, and I just noticed it's not maintained, so you can skip that one. So I think the top three that we care about are Plone, Django CMS, and Wagtail CMS. All right, so now you know about all the different Python web frameworks that are super popular right now. There are several others that I didn't mention here. You're welcome to comment on those and if you want to, and tell me about which ones you use. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you